I think Trump's speech rehashing all of his grievances about his big fat loss in the 2020 election actually really negatively impacted him. I think that that was a big L for him. He is a loser of a president. Still shocked that he won in 2024, but he lost in 2020. He lost his attempt to try and get Georgia to switch votes for him or to change the results afterward. He failed at his insurrection. And now here he is again losing power. He is just like hemorrhaging power and support. And I think that this speech really demonstrated that and really caused him to be diminished further. Now, I've been talking since early last year about how autocrats don't really have much power on their own. They get power from the people and they get power from the pillars of support that hold them up. And those can be institutions like colleges, lawyers who bent the knee. It can be other branches of the government like Republicans in Congress, Supreme Court. It can be corporations, billionaires, Google, right? Palantir, Amazon, Meta. And all of those billionaires, Zuck and Jeff Bezos and, all those guys, obviously Elon Musk, who prop up dear leader. He gets all of that power from all of those folks who are willing to hold him up and willing to do his bidding. They're either unwilling to go against him, right? So they're offering tacit support by refusing to stand up and oppose what he's doing, or they are active collaborators in assisting, facilitating his fascist takeover of this country because they think that it will profit them in some way. There are also folks when it comes to autocrats like Donald Trump who are true believers, right? Because MAGA is a cult. So there is also that pillar of religious institutions who have been co-opted by the cult, right? Evangelical Christians who have turned into a Christo-fascist doomsday cult. Pete Hegseth, Mike Johnson, they're in that, right? In that pool. They also want to enrich themselves, but what have you. But there are true believers in MAGA who will do Donald Trump's bidding because they believe he's God's anointed. They believe he's God's instrument. He's going to somehow facilitate the second coming of Jesus, right? Those folks are also a pillar. When Donald Trump came into office, he had more than 50% support. His popularity was like 54%, which I found baffling. He did not get even 50% of the vote. And if you look at registered voters, I think it was something like 30% of registered voters. Right? Registered voters who did not vote actually won the 2024 election. More people stayed home and did not vote than voted for Donald Trump. But of those who voted, he still got less than 50%, 49 point something percent. But he came in saying he had a mandate from the people and he had all of this power. And when he got into office, I was like, well, this is the most popular he'll ever be, right? Like Inauguration Day, the most popular Trump will ever be, because the more he rolls out his terrible plan, the more he is going to turn people against him. The more people are going to be opposed as he starts to materially negatively impact their life in significant ways. They're going to flee. They're going to turn from him. I think we all did not anticipate how many corporations, colleges, institutions, big law would all immediately bend the knee. Media corporations would bend the knee. And it has made the resistance work significantly more difficult because he's had these strong pillars of support underneath him who thought that they could make more money. In a capitalist system, you guys, they thought that they could make more money. They were willing to destroy democracy for money. They were willing to support an ethnic cleansing and concentration camps for money. They are willing to have the Voting Rights Act dismantled, disenfranchise millions of Black voters. They're willing to support the passage of the SAVE Act and disenfranchise 10 million women voters for money. And it's so hard to reach those pillars of support when you can't appeal to their ethics, you can't appeal to their morals, you can only appeal to their pocketbook. And one of the reasons that I've said that economic resistance is so important, boycotts, blackouts, labor strikes, general strikes, which we've not gotten to yet, are so important is because money is the only language that a lot of these pillars speak. A lot of the willing collaborators like Lindsey Graham, they were never ideologues. They were never part of the cult of MAGA. They don't worship Donald Trump. They think he's a buffoon. They think he is a useless idiot. You think Russell Vogt gives two shits about Donald Trump? You think Russell Vogt thinks Donald Trump is God's anointed? No, he saw him as a useful idiot that he could use and leverage. A fragile narcissist, right, who you can just manipulate him through his very brittle ego very easily, and also his love of money, right, his love of grifting. And so Russell Vought saw Donald Trump as a tool he could use to basically dismantle democracy and institute Christian nationalism in the United States and enrich himself in the process. And likewise, all of these other pillars of support, like they didn't love Trump. They don't like Trump. Most of them will shit talk him behind his back any day of the week, right? They think that he is a blathering idiot. And yet they are willing to stand by him. So you can't appeal to their morals, to their ethics. You can't be like, look at the inhumanity. They don't care. They are detached enough from their humanity that they only care about their power and they care about their wealth. And so it's been difficult to reach those folks through non-economic means. But suddenly, Trump is so unpopular. What he's doing is destroying the economy. He's dragged us into a forever war with Iran. And also his dementia is just so obvious. And he's so embarrassing. This speech last night was just him, full display of like, I can't get over my loss to Joe Biden. I can't get over it, and I am willing to destroy the economy. I'm willing to destroy this country. I'm willing to hurt everybody because I am so mad that I lost to Joe Biden. And listening last night on 2x speed after the fact, he didn't sound strong. He sounded like a whiner. He sounded like a bitter, sad old man who can't let go of his past failures. He sounded like a man living in the past, obsessed with Joe Biden. Could you imagine being any more pathetic than being obsessed with Joe Biden? Like, he did not project strength and power. He looked like a loser because he is a loser. And he didn't draw anybody in. I said this in a previous video, like that press conference, primetime speech, whatever it was, it didn't recruit anybody. He didn't build any power in that speech. He started out at 54%. Everything he's done, every single action he's taken has lost him support in every single demographic, right? He has become incredibly unpopular, and none of those people are going to return to him. Nothing he is doing or saying now is persuading anybody else to join MAGA. And in fact, it is causing not just voters to peel off from him, but I would argue that speech last night caused some really significant pillars to pull away from him in a very, very public manner. We saw major media corporations not air that speech. We saw major media corporations put out statements saying, we're concerned about the misinformation and inaccuracies that are going to be in this, and we have a duty to our audience not to show this speech at all. And when we look at how CNN, NBC, ABC, all of these major media networks for more than 10 years sane-washed and platformed Donald Trump to the entire nation, they arguably helped him get elected. And yet we saw CNN say, we're not going to air this. And we've seen Caitlin Collins expressing concern. Caitlin Collins interviewed Donald Trump before the 2024 election, put him out to millions of people in exchange for her getting a promotion to a primetime anchor spot. These networks helped get him the presidency. These networks allowed his misinformation and his lies to be spewed to millions and millions of people for years and years. Corporate media has been a massive pillar of support for Trump because they make tons of money, right? People watch Trump. People are willing to come and look at clips of him, either hate watching or because they're loyal to him. And that has been very profitable for these networks. And then with this speech, we saw the tide turn in a way that it's not going to come back in for Donald Trump. These guys are not going to decide they're going to give him more support. Just like he didn't build any more of his base, he didn't draw any voters to him, he also saw these big media pillars pull away. I think he imagined this speech would be the beginning of him rolling out his attempt to derail the midterms in a very public way. And it ended up being him like basically begging Republicans, please pass the SAVE Act. You've told me no so many times, but like, please, please, please. And he thought it would be intimidating. He thought that this would be the inevitable foundation groundwork for him to steal the midterms. And I think it was a huge, huge unforced error on his part. I think that he is significantly diminished in so many aspects because of this speech. With that loss of power comes a loss of control and more narcissistic injury. And I think we need to expect that he will get more extreme, more ridiculous. He will stoke more political violence, and he will become increasingly desperate to absolutely in any way possible derail the midterms. So we need to have our A game on. We need to be organizing locally. We need to be anticipating what our moves are going to be. We need to be getting our shit together, because it's not just voting, it's what happens in these next couple of months and also between November and January. He's weak, and that makes him more dangerous.